All right, cool. Hi, everybody. We are going to get started. Thank you so much for coming to our data analytics with Excel workshop. This is going to be a very hands-on format. So you should be ready to open up Excel or Google Sheets or whichever program you want to use for today. And we'll be going through a bunch of hands-on exercises together. So hopefully it'll be fun, it'll be interactive, and you'll actually get a lot of practice in this session. So you'll start to kind of get some of those skills under your belt. Let's see, just a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. If you didn't sign in on the computer on your way in, please at least do that on your way out so that they have a sense of attendance for this. And yeah, and then we'll get into this in a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit of intro, but this is where the link you should go to get the guide for the class that we're going to be following today. That's the same URL as on the whiteboard. So feel free to pop that open and do a little bit of intro stuff. All right. Go in here. So really happy to be here. This is my, I think, third or fourth semester teaching this series of workshops in the Digital Lounge. So really happy to be back. You might be wondering who I am and why I'm here teaching you Excel. So my name is Rachel Whaley. I have been working in kind of the data space broadly defined for the last 10 years or so in a bunch of different sectors. I worked in nonprofit, I worked in public school systems and government consulting, higher ed. I actually used to work here at Annenberg in the IT department. And now I work at a startup where we do podcast advertising. So kind of media adjacent. In all of those roles, I've used a ton of data, even though I didn't originally start out with a super data heavy background. So in undergrad, I majored in public policy. I was really interested in social science and kind of got into the data world from there. I was really interested in research and kind of how that could be used to inform the real world. And so as I started working, got really interested in data and ended up going back to school to get my master's in computer science. But all that said, this workshop is going to be very beginner friendly. So if you haven't used Excel a lot, if you're not super comfortable in there, this is going to be totally fine. This is not computer science master's level anything. So don't be scared. All right, so I would love to just get a sense of people in the room, like how much have you used Excel before? So 5 would be you already feel like you're an expert, you're just here for a refresher. 1 is like you maybe used it a little bit, but you're not super comfy in there. Can I just get like a show of hands? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How are we feeling? Okay, so yeah, seeing a lot of 2s and 3s, a lot of 2s and 3s. Okay, cool, awesome. Great, that's totally perfect. So a little bit of this, bits and pieces of this might be review, but hopefully there will be a lot of good new stuff in here as well. And then can I just do one more show of hands? Folks are here from master's programs, undergrad classes. Let's see, maybe show of hands if you're from a master's program. Okay, awesome. Anyone here from an undergrad? Okay, all right, cool. Welcome. We usually have a few. Great. Okay, cool. Enough of that. Let's get into it. So what are we going to do today? Today we're going to be really focused on getting down the basics of formatting and formulas in Excel, right? These are 2 really powerful tools, especially as you get to working with data visualization, as you're working collaboratively on spreadsheets with other people. These are the types of features that you're going to be using all the time. In the next few weeks, we'll get into more advanced topics, so more advanced formulas, pivot tables and pivot charts, making kind of whole interactive dashboards within Excel. So it's all going to build towards that, but this is the foundation that we're going to start with today. So we'll talk about formatting, formulas, and data validation with drop-down menus. All right, so that's what we're going to cover today. And so what we're going to do in today's class is we're going to download some data from Netflix. Okay, they published some data on some of their top shows, and we are going to use our formatting and formula knowledge to turn just sort of our data export into something that looks like this. So a little more polished. It's got some kind of stats going on, some formulas, both going on in sort of our rows down here in our details, as well as kind of our little summary at the top. All right, so that's what we're going to produce today. Everyone will have something like this on the right-hand side when we're done. Sound cool? All right, sweet. Okay, so the link, if you go here, there's a link. All the instructions that are going to be on the slides are also on that link. So if you like get a little behind or you want to go back to something, or if this feels like review and you want to go a little ahead of us, that's totally fine. It's all in that link. We are going to be following right along. So first thing you're going to need to do is go and download our Netflix data set. All right, so you're going to go to this link, netflix.com/TUDUM. That is tudum. That is the sound that plays when you turn on your Netflix and it goes tudum. That's what that is, /top 10. And we're going to download some data on their most popular list, which they conveniently publish in Excel format. I think I still have this pulled up so you can see what it looks like. Yeah, so you should go here, go to your little download icon in the upper right. Let me just show you. Okay, so from this page, you can grab your little download icon right here. Then you're going to pick lists at the top. All right, and you're going to grab the Excel copy of our most popular lists. All right, if anyone's having trouble with the link, give me a little wave. Go ahead and get that downloaded and pop it open. All right, again, all the instructions for like this bit are all on our little guide. So if you need to come back to this, you can. When you go to that link, just to make sure everybody knows what's up, that link will bring you here where you can get to our tutorial for week 1. And this is where there's all these instructions that we're about to go through are copied. All right, so those are all in there. Anyone have any issues with any of the links so far? Everything working? Okay, sweet. All right, cool. Okay, so go ahead and save a copy of that file and open it up in Excel, in Google Sheets, in Apple Numbers if you want. You might be wondering what you should be using for this class. You can use any of those things. I will be using Excel. I'll be demoing in Excel. Most of the features also exist in Google Sheets. Some of the names are going to be slightly different, or where the menus are going to be slightly different, right? So just be prepared for that. I'm also demoing on a Mac. Things are very similar on PC, especially if you're still using Excel, but there may, again, maybe some like slight differences. So if you're not seeing something, just give me a little wave. I'm also quite adept in Google Sheets and can help you out if you would rather do it that way. All right, so either way, that file that you just downloaded from Netflix, you should pop open in one of these programs and it should look something like this. All right. Before we get into working with any data set, just good to kind of like take a look at it and see what it is, make sure we understand what's going on here. So this is going to be the top 10 pieces of content in 4 different categories. All right, English language films, non-English language films, and then same for TV, English and non-English language. All right, we've got a few other pieces of information. We've got the rank of each piece of content, which within each category. All right, so you'll notice this goes 1 to 10, 1 to 10, and on down. We've got our title, obvious for season title, that's only filled in for our TV content, right? There's no season title for films. And then we've got a little bit of numerical data over here. So we've got the hours viewed in the first 91 days. Okay, so that's a lot of hours, a lot of people sitting on their couches watching Netflix, all right? We've got the runtime of each piece of content. So this is in hours, right? You'll notice most of the movies are around 2 hours. Most of the series are around 8 or 9 hours. That makes sense. And then we've got the number of views in the first 91 days. All right, why Netflix publishes their stats in 91-day increments, I do not know, but they are a private company and can do whatever they want. So that is what they publish. Cool. All right, so you should have a data set that looks very similarly to this. That is what we're going to be working with today. Okay, so I just want to orient you a little bit to some terms we're going to be using as we navigate around our spreadsheet and make sure everybody knows what's what. All right, so in any spreadsheet, information is organized into rows and columns, and each piece of information lives in a cell. All right, so just a quick little bit of a review here. Rows go across, they go horizontally, all right, and they're each given a number. Regardless of which program you're using, you'll see a number on the left-hand side. So this is row 1, 2, 3, etc. And then our columns go vertically, and our columns all have a letter label. All right, so columns A, B, C, etc. All right, so much like a chess board, if anyone here loves to play chess, you can refer to any cell in here by its column and row label. All right, so this cell that I'm in right here is in column B and it's in row 6. So this is cell B6. This is going to become important when we start referring to other cells in our formulas. And then the next thing to know is that you can select multiple cells at a time, of course. There's going to be many times when we're doing that in one of our formulas. You can imagine taking the sum of a column, for example, or the average of a column. In that case, we're going to select a group of cells, and you're going to see 2 cell labels. So like our cell B6, G5, something like that. When you see 2 cells separated by a colon, that means it's the whole range of cells. So you can think of those 2 cells as like corners of a rectangle. So if I select this, I've got B6 to C9, that's the other corner of my rectangle. That's what that range would look like if I were gonna, these were numbers that I was taking the total of, for example. All right. You can also select an entire row or an entire column and just refer to it as its letter or number label. So if I wanted to select the first 3 columns here, I could do that, and this would be A:C because I'm going from column A over to column C. All right, same thing with rows. This will make more sense once we start working with formulas, but just want to make sure everyone's clear. Columns are letters, rows are numbers. Any questions about any of this? Okay, cool. Hopefully that was a bit of a brush up for folks. Okay, so first things first, we're going to do a little bit of formatting. We're going to start making our data pretty. That's kind of what this step is. But in addition to sort of looking a little nicer and cleaner, it's also got some built-in functionality that's going to make it a little bit easier to manipulate. It's going to recognize our data as a table and let us interact with it as such. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is do some formatting. So if you hop into your sheet, you want to select all your cells that are filled in, that have information in them. A handy keyboard shortcut for that, if you're on Mac, is Command A. I think it's Control A on a PC. So just click any one of the cells that has information and then click or hit Command A. That's always going to grab all the sort of like contiguous cells that have information. That's just an easy shortcut. All right, then we're going to go to our ribbon. So up in the top part of Excel here, this is what's called your ribbon. I'll be referring to this today. This is our home section of our ribbon because we've got a few different ribbon sections. All right, but up here in your home ribbon, about halfway across, you have an option called Format as Table. All right, so I'm going to come and grab my Format as Table. When I hit that arrow, it's going to give me a whole bunch of options as to which format I want. I think I did my example in this sort of like black and white color. You can choose whichever color pattern strikes your fancy. And then it's going to ask you a little confirmation question. It's going to say, what data do you have selected? And does it have headers? So you can see here, it's got some dollar signs. Ignore the dollar signs for a moment. We'll come back to those. But it's saying A1:G41. Right? That means it's referring to that whole chunk of cells. It's going to turn into a table. I can eyeball that and go to G and 41, be like, yep, I got all my data selected. I'm good to go. And I do have headers, right? Category, rank, show title, etc. So I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to do some magic formatting for me. All right, it's doing a little nice different color on the top. It's doing little alternating rows. All right, and I could change this if I wanted to green or pink or turquoise or whatever I want. All right, so go ahead and format your data as a table in whatever your favorite color is for today. Maybe I'll do this magenta. Okay, great. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add some rows up above our table. All right. As a reminder, this is sort of what we're going for as our final result. So we've got our data table down here at the bottom, and we've got sort of a little, very simple kind of summary dashboard up at the top. All right, so what we're going to do is essentially, now that we've got our table, we're going to push it several rows down so that we can get into our kind of little top section. Right. So to insert rows, you can select however many rows you want to insert. I'm going to do maybe 10 or 12 rows to give myself some time to play around. I'm going to select them on the left-hand side here and then right click them and hit insert. All right, that's going to give me a whole bunch of rows up above that are not included in my table, right? So all my nice little formatting with my alternating rows, that's not up here. That means this is not part of my table. So however many rows you select before you hit insert, that's how many you'll get. You can also just select one at a time and go insert, select a few more if you need to. Okay. All right. Another general tip, if you're using like any desktop versions of this stuff, is just to save regularly. Excel is like pretty good software, but always occasionally dies on you. So I would recommend hitting Command S as you're going to make changes. Okay, great. So we've done some basics. We've got our table formatted and we've got some rows up at the top to play with. All right, now we're going to do a little bit of, I call this kind of like window dressing. All right, we're going to add a picture in here. We're going to throw in, I did the Netflix logo. You could do the same. You could do a different image if you want, but want to make sure you know how to throw in an image. This is always nice, especially if you're doing anything in, say, a job or an internship. Always nice to get the kind of company logo in there, stuff like that. All right, so to get an image in there, you're going to pick whichever cell you want your image to go into. I'm going to say maybe about there for this one, maybe here, a little closer to the middle. And then I can do insert picture, right? From here, I want to place this picture in the cell itself. That's going to let me kind of drag the cell size around and set the size of my image. All right, now I already have the Netflix logo downloaded. If you don't, which why would you? You can pop onto Google Images, download one quickly, grab, again, any other image, throw a picture of your dog in there, whatever you want to do. I will do my Netflix logo here. All right. Image. All right. Oh. Okay. Once you have your image, you can just insert it into your cell. Once it's in your cell, it should show up really small. It might look like text if you pick the same image I have. And then you can just resize your row and your column to make the image whatever size you like. So in this case, I'm just going to grab the bottom of my row here and drag it down. See, that made my image a little larger. I'm going to drag this, do the same thing with the column, drag it around a little bit to make my image a little larger. Depends on the size of image you choose, obviously, but in this case, I can make it a good bit bigger. Cool. Everybody get their image in there? I think a few people maybe walked in a few minutes late. If you did, make sure you go to this link. That's going to have all the steps that we are going through. So to catch up on any last things, that's all in there. Okay. Fabulous. All right. Cool. Oh, and I totally forgot about this. I did it the way I just described to you, and then I realized you can actually go and look for online pictures in the newest version of Excel. I don't know if Google Sheets does this, probably does, but from your insert image option, you can actually just grab and search for pictures right here. Just cool. All right, great. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is just add a title. You can do all the same kind of text formatting stuff that you can do in Word, PowerPoint, in Excel. People often forget that you can do this. And again, it's just kind of a nice little window dressing thing. So I might call this something like our top 10 tracker. So I'm just going to type this into one of these cells up here near the top. And from my home ribbon, I can do all my same formatting. So I can make my font a little bigger. I can make it bold. I can change the font if I want to. Let's try this one. And I can do a little bit of alignment. So these little icons here with the triple lines, those will let me do things like center it, left, right, and then center it top, bottom. So again, just kind of some nice little formatting tricks, stuff you might already be familiar with from formatting other types of docs. Moving right along. So next thing we're going to do is start working on some data validation. What is data validation? You can think of this as like when you're filling out a form. Okay, so for example, let's say you are typing in your address on any web form. There's going to be a field for state, and it's typically not like a free text field. You don't have to type in like California, right? Typically you click there and there's a little drop down for the states. Why is there a drop down for the states? Because the company that you're ordering from doesn't want to take the risk that you mistype and write California instead of California. And then they've got to go in and fix your data, right? So that is a form of data validation. You can do that within Excel. This is very handy if you are maybe collecting data from a bunch of different people. Maybe you have a shared Google sheet with your company or your team for a class project, something like that, and you're trying to get people to input a bunch of information. This is a way you can give them a set of defined, consistent options. Okay. So we are going to add a column to our sheet. We're going to make this our own personal tracker of how many of these TV shows and movies we personally have seen. All right, that's going to be the function of our little dashboard for the purpose of this. So what we want to do is give ourselves a few options. What's going to be in our drop-down menu for each piece of content for ourselves. Okay, so we're going to type out a little list of these in a new sheet. That's what we're going to do first, because we're going to define our little list, and then I'll show you how to make it into a drop-down menu that we can use on our main dashboard. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to pop in here and you're going to open a new sheet or new tab in your work. All right, so I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to type a little list of options. I'm going to say, yes, loved it. Yes, it was okay. No, haven't seen it. All right, but just, 3 or 4 options, something like this, right? Ways you might categorize TV shows and movies for yourself. All right. Next thing we're going to do is add a column to our data table where we can keep track of this for ourselves. All right, so what I'm going to do is come over all the way to the rightmost column of my spreadsheet. Again, I'm going to right click on it. And that's going to give me my little pop-up menu for insert, which will tell me that I can add columns to my table to the left or to the right. All right, order doesn't really matter. I'm going to go to the right, but do whatever you like. And then it's going to carry over all this nice little formatting, all my nice little headers, right? And it's just put in a placeholder header, column 1. So I'm going to put in something that's more descriptive. I'm going to write something like, have I seen it? Something like that. All right, I can make my column a little wider. All right, fabulous. Okay, what we're going to do next is basically apply some logic, some validation logic to all the cells in this column. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to come under our header and select our first cell, and then we're going to select all the way down just until the end of your table. All right, so not all the way down to like infinity, row 1,000, 100, whatever, but just to the bottom of your table. A handy little keyboard shortcut for doing that, so you don't have to always drag. If you select your top cell of your column here, not including our header, and then on Mac, it's Shift Command down. I think it's Shift Control down on PC. That'll automatically select, it'll kind of automatically know where the sort of end point of your data is. It sees where these other column ends, and it's just going to kind of line you up right there. It saves you a little time. It's Shift Command and then your down arrow key. All right. Next, you're going to come up into your ribbon. So before we were up in the home ribbon doing some formatting. Now we're going to hop over into our data section of our ribbon. All right, so I'm up in the ribbon. I've switched from home to data. And we're going to add some data validation. So depending on how bit wide your screen is, you might see data validation, or you might see this little icon that has these like green and red check marks next to it, that is our data validation icon. So you're going to go ahead and select that. Okay. So this is going to give us some settings to say what kind of information is allowed to go in these cells. You're basically setting up some rules. Okay. So the rule that we are going to set up is that it needs to be, let's see, right here, we're going to choose from list. All right, so we're going to allow only a set of values from a defined list. All right, and then it's going to ask us what the source of this list is, which is the values that we already typed. So before, when we went and added our other sheet, we typed a few like yes, no, maybe so. We're going to go and grab those. So what you're going to do, you're going to click into this box and you'll see there's a little tiny icon in the corner. It's got a little red arrow. That's a selector icon. That's going to tell us that we can go and just select in our sheet where these cells are that we want to use as our list. What we're going to do is select that little icon. It's going to minimize my little window into this tiny little bar. So it almost gets lost at the top, right into that tiny little bar. And then I just got to click around by myself. So I'm going to go click to this tab. I'm going to go click my first cell here. And I'm just going to click and drag down to get all three of my values. And you'll see as I do that, it fills in my little data validation bar up here with this thing that says sheet 1, A1 to A3. All right, so that's grabbing this range of cells for my little list. All right, once you have that, you can come back up and click this little icon again to sort of expand it back down. All right, and then we have a couple of other options that we can set up here. Oh, goodness. All right, a couple other options we can set up here. We can show a little help message to our users. So this is helpful if you're sharing the sheet with a bunch of other people, explaining what this drop-down menu is. So we can put something like, have you seen it? Have you seen this content? Something like that. You could put something more fun and interesting if you like. You can think of this as sort of some like user help text. All right, and then you can also set up a little error message. So you can just sort of customize what it might say if someone tries to type something in here that's not from our list. So we can say something like not allowed. That value is not in our list. All right, once you've done that, you'll hit OK. All right, so you've done your data validation and you'll notice the only thing that's changed, all my cells are still blank, but there's this little kind of pop out to the right here, little tiny down arrow next to my first cell. That is my drop-down menu that we just created. So if I click on this cell and then I click on this little arrow, I get my handy dandy little options that we set up on the other side. I can pick one of those. Yes, it was okay. All right, I can come down to my next cell. I get my little arrow, say no, I haven't seen it, etc., etc. All right, now I could come in here and try to put something else in this cell. I could type 42, let's say, and I'll get a little error message when I hit enter. It'll say not allowed, that value is not in our list. That's a little error message. Any questions about this? Anyone's drop-down menu not working? Yeah.
On my drop-down menu, I'm getting one more menu. The have you seen it? Have you seen such content is also popping up.
Ah, okay.
I don't know why.
Come take a look.
So,
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so you're getting the little like help text hover. Yeah, mine isn't showing the hover for some reason, but yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Is this how it's supposed to
Yeah,
work?
yeah.
Okay.
That's what I think that there's just a setting somewhere we can default it on.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you're totally good. Anyone else? Questions, issues, not working? Over here?
Yeah, question like,
Yeah.
I missed the, like, it was the first.
Oh, got it.
Should I set
Yeah, totally. Okay, so what I would do is go and click one of these. A. You'll get everything, yep, and then you're gonna do format as table. Usually in your home ribbon.
我觉得 Spreadsheet 已经准备退掉了，知道我这样。因为呢，
Get through that first one, yep.
有点 OK 吧？
有点 OK。
Great, and then pick whichever pattern you like. Yep. And then Great. And then to add a column here, just right on your. Yeah, I usually do it that. And then control, and then click. Yeah, perfect. And then one of those should be insert, like insert column. Yep. Yep, perfect.
然后这也是
Okay, great. And then that's giving you this little blank column right
这样
here.
天
And then you can put your
从8点开始上，上到3点，先上3点。
yeah, so if you had selected the other one from the menu, the like,
明天
right instead of
以前
left or whatever, it would go to that side. So you can just do that again. Yes. Other questions? Anyone's not working? Figured it out? Okay, cool. All right, if yours is working, go ahead and like fill a few of these out. All right, so just like either your true answers or just some random answers so that we have some data in here because we're going to use it later. All right, so make sure at least a few of those are filled in. All right. Cool. Okay, we did our error alert, filled in our field on a few rows, make sure we get those little options. Excellent. Okay, any questions about our drop-down menu, what it's doing, how it works? Has anyone ever used those before? Probably yes, no. Okay, all right, got a good mix. Okay, great. So now that we've covered data validation, we are gonna get started on some formulas. We're going to cover a bunch of different types of formulas today, a bunch of examples of different types of them. And we're going to do them kind of same style. So we're just going to kind of dive in with some examples, put them right in our data set so you can actually see how they work. The first kind of formula that we're going to work on is what I'm calling kind of row-based formulas. All right, so if you come and look at our data set, you can imagine there's kind of different types of sort of calculations we could do. There's some data that exists on more of a row basis, meaning, you know, the runtime of an individual piece of content that exists on a row basis. This is the runtime in hours. If we wanted to get the runtime in minutes, we would be doing that math sort of this way. Does that make sense? We would be sort of manipulating each of these values for each row so that we would see for each piece of content, how long is it in minutes? Okay, that's the type of formula we're going to work on first. And then in the second part of class, we're going to talk about formulas that are column-based or sort of summary formulas. So those will be more things like what's the average runtime across all of these pieces of content, summarizing, sort of compressing this down to one value. Okay, but we're going to talk about our row-based formulas first. Okay, so if you have never used a formula in Excel, or if you have and you're a little rusty, I'm just going to go over some basics of how they're set up. Anytime you're going to use a formula, the very first thing you got to type in that cell is an equal sign. All right, because that's the only thing that's going to tell Excel that what you're about to type is a formula. Otherwise, it will interpret it as text or a date or whatever kind of thing you're typing in. Okay, so everything has got to start with an equal sign. Second thing is the name of the function. We're going to test out a bunch of different types of functions today. They all have different names. My advice to you would be to not worry about memorizing any of them, but just to kind of understand how they work and where the list of them is so that you know where to go grab them if you need one. And then every function is going to be followed by some parentheses. These parentheses are where you're going to put the inputs to your function. What pieces of information does it need in order to give us a result? There's a few functions that don't need any pieces of information. They can just spit stuff out right away. So that your parentheses could be empty, but typically they're going to have one or more inputs in them. So you could give it some text, you could give it another cell or another column or another row that it's going to take in and do some operations on. So those are called inputs or arguments. It's the same thing. There are multiple arguments for a function. There's going to be commas in between. All right, so a lot of common kind of beginner errors with functions are you might forget your equal sign, you might forget your parentheses, you might forget your commas in between. So those are the kinds of things we're gonna be thinking about. The next thing to know is that as we're going through functions, some of you might have used some of these before, some of you might be brand new. Whenever you start typing the function name, Excel and Google Sheets will usually provide a little pop-up that's just going to give you a little refresher of how many inputs does it need and what are those inputs supposed to be. It's going to give you like a little cheat sheet. That's a very abbreviated one that'll pop up in that window. You can also get a more detailed description from the formula builder, which is kind of a cool thing. So if you're in Excel, you can come up to the view drop-down menu, not your ribbon, but your drop-down menu, and have it show the formula builder. This will give you a list of a bunch of different formulas, and it'll tell you some information about them. So this is a formula called len. It takes the length of a piece of text, pretty straightforward, but it's going to tell you what it does, returns a number of characters in a string, and then it's going to tell you the syntax, meaning what arguments does it need. So it basically just needs a piece of text, and it's going to say, it'll find that length. It'll also count spaces, right? So if I put my first name and my last name in there, it'll count my first name, my last name, plus the space in between as the length. All right. So this might be handy to have up, especially if you're a little bit less familiar with the formulas we're doing today, to have that open on the side so you have a little explainer. Cool. Everybody figure out how to pop this open? Okay, great. All right, so let's get into some formulas. We're gonna get the math one out of the way. So some people's favorite, some people's least favorite. We're just gonna knock it right out. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is add a column to figure out the runtime in minutes of our piece of content. This is very simple math, but just to give you an example of how a math formula works. So on our table here, I'm going to close this just so you can see the view, but again, I would recommend you have it open if you're a little less familiar. We have our runtime here, but it is in hours. So we're going to add a column to give our runtime in minutes. So first thing I'm going to do is click in this column. I'm going to right click or control click or however you have your laptop configured. All right, and then I'm going to do insert column. In this case, I want to do a column over, I'll do it to the left in this case. And I'm going to give it a new name. So it's giving me my little auto-populated name up here. It's a little bigger while we do formulas. And I'll give this a name like runtime minutes. Okay, so that I know that it's different. All right. So because this is a formula, we need to start with our equal sign. Now, because this is math, it's sort of the one exception to what I just told you, which is we don't need a function name. The kind of math symbols that you typically use, plus, minus, divide, multiply, exponent, etc., those all work in Excel. All right, so we're going to start with our equal sign in our first cell in our new column. All right, so I'm just right in here. I'm going to hit equals on my keyboard. You'll see I'm editing here, but I'm also editing up in my formula bar up at the top. You can look at whichever you like. And then this is where I'm going to go reference my cell. So if I want to go grab the first cell in my runtime column, what cell label would I type in? What is the sort of address of that cell? G15, amazing. Okay, great. So I can either just type in G15 on my keyboard, or I can just pop over with my arrow key to actually just highlight where that cell is. Both work. All right. Now you'll notice when I pop over with my arrow key, I think it flashed G15 for like a second, and then it updated to this little at runtime thing. This is a little kind of dynamic recognition where Excel is noticing we already formatted this as a table, so I already understand that this column is associated with this little header name. So it's like being a little bit smart for you. That's totally fine. That totally works. So whether you type in G15 or whether you pop over and it says this, both are the same. And then we're going to do our math symbol. Our math symbol for multiplication is our asterisk. All right. And then how do we get from hours to minutes? What do we multiply by? 60. Amazing. Okay, a bunch of math majors in here. Cool. All right, great. I'm going to hit enter. And because it dynamically already checked for my runtime column, As soon as I hit enter, it actually copy pasted my formula all the way down. Pretty nifty. And one of the reasons that we like to format as a table before we start doing this stuff, because it actually is quite functional. If yours didn't do that automatically, you can also, as soon as you've typed this in, you can do copy, Command C, and then you can just select all your cells and paste it on down. All right. Anyone have any issues getting this formula to work? Did everybody get it all the way down the column? Okay, cool. You should be getting a bigger number than our original column. So we multiply. Yeah, bigger numbers. Okay, great. Yeah,
I
question.
have a question, like, I didn't show up the runtime, like, that formula part. I only shows, like, the G40. It doesn't show the.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh, that's okay.
Yep. It,
Okay.
yeah, it might depend on which version of Excel you
Oh,
have, or again, like little
okay.
settings, they're the same and they both
Oh,
totally
okay,
work.
I see.
Yep.
Thank you.
I got myself the new version right before this class started. All right, so I got the latest technology. Last semester I was teaching this with the 2019 edition, and it was a little embarrassing. All right. Okay. Great. So we got our math formula. Pretty straightforward, not too hard. Formulas might sound scary, maybe not so scary. Yeah, feeling okay? All right, great. So we're gonna go through a bunch of different formats of formulas, all right? One of my favorite little Excel tricks is to use formulas for dates. There's a lot of handy formulas you can use when the data is in date form. So we're essentially gonna add a sort of column to our tracker that's gonna calculate how many days has it been since you watched this piece of content. So in order to do that, we're going to put in a column where you can log the date that you watch something. All right. So if you have the Letterboxd app and you like to, record your film viewing, this is a similar idea. Okay. So we're going to hop in. You're going to start to recognize a pattern here where we add a new column. I'm going to hop in here and I'm going to do add a column. So again, I'm going to right click and do insert. And I'm going to say, I'll do this one to the right, but again, you can organize your order however you like. And I'm going to give this column a name, zoom thing out of the way, something like date scene, something like that. You can always make your columns a little wider. Another little trick, if you hover right between your two columns at the top there and double click, it'll sort of auto fit the size to the text that you have. So I can do that on this one, and it's going to auto fit to that first header that's a little longer. So just a little trick. Okay. I've got my date scene. Now, if you did what I did and you added this column right next to our data validation, you might notice that we're getting our little pop-up on this column as well, which I actually don't want. I don't want these options. I want to be able to type in like September 1st, 2025. But if I do that, I'm going to get my error message that I got before. Yeah. So if this happened to you, if you put your column in the same place, don't panic. All you're going to do is you're going to select this column. So again, I like to do this by clicking that first cell under my header, and I do my Shift Command down key to just grab all those relevant values. And then I go right on back to my data validation tool that we used before. So I'm essentially going to use this to turn this off for this column. I'm going to go to my settings, and I think I just can hit clear all for this. Amazing. And then I'm going to hit OK. Yes. Okay. So if you are getting the validation here and you don't want it, you select your column, you go back to your validation, back to your options, and you're just going to hit clear all, and that's going to remove it from this column. Yeah, question.
Why am I not finding the same problem? Because when I do the insertion and then I can type in any kind of
Amazing.
stuff.
Great. Mine just might have copied it over. If you inserted like to the left
Yeah,
instead
yeah,
of the
yeah.
right or something, it might have just not copied.
So it's okay if it's not.
Yeah, it's all good. There's a bunch of little stuff that's like the little settings could be different or just how it defaults or whatever. So don't worry, you're all good. But in case you run into this problem. So now I'm going to try typing in a date. Let's say I saw this on September 1st. Let's say I saw this on September 7th. Go ahead and type in some dates, make sure that works. Right? They can be fictional or not fictional or whatever, depending on how much everyone here watches Netflix. I don't know. You don't have to tell me. Up to you. Okay. So I'm going to type in some dates. The reason I'm going to do this is because we're going to do a formula that's going to rely on having a few dates. So make sure you have a column, make sure you type in at least a few dates that were prior to today. Okay. All right. So now that we have our sort of baseline data, what we're going to do is say, how many days has it been since I've seen this piece of content? So if I watched this last Monday, I want the result to say 7, right? It's been 7 days since I saw this piece of content. So we are going to use a little handy date formula called today, which just gives you today's date. All right. So I'm going to add a new column again. So I've got this, my column for date scene. I'm going to add one more column. I'm going to do it again to the right, but you can do it wherever you like. I'm going to label this something like days since seen. Okay, something like that. Again, I'm going to double click up in my little column label to get their nice auto sizing. Okay, and this is where I'm going to do my little formula. So if I'm typing in a formula, the first thing I type in is equal sign. Yes, very good. Okay, so type in my equal sign. And I'm going to start with a formula that is called today. The formula today has no arguments, and actually I can just type enter from there. This is not quite finished, but if I stop there, you'll see that all it does is it spits out today's date in every single cell. That's not that helpful though. What we want to know is how many days has it been since the date over here in column J. And the way that date math works in Excel is you can just subtract them to get the number of days. You can subtract 2 dates and it'll show you the number of days in between. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to this first cell, edit my formula, which I can do by clicking up here in my formula bar. I'm going to click up into my formula bar, and I'm just going to do a minus. All right, so just our subtraction. And then I'm either going to type in, this is cell J15, so I can either type in J15 or just go grab it with my cursor, either way. Again, mine's doing this little updatey thing. Yours may or may not do that. That's cool. It's the same either way. And I'm going to hit enter. All right. So now it's giving me the result I would expect, which is a date in the year 2000. It's actually not what I would expect, right? That's a little confusing. So this is a number formatting problem. So because this value was previously a date when I was doing my little demo of just what the today formula is, it's still formatting these cells as dates, even though we actually want them to be a number. So we're going to do a little formatting fix here. Same thing, you're going to select all these cells. So I'm going to do that first one, Shift Command down, and I'm going to go in my home ribbon over to my number formatting section right about here. And this is where you'll see our little hint about why this is happening. Our number formatting selector here is saying that this is a date. This little drop down that says date is doing that. I can come to this drop down and change it to a number. So I'm going to do that. And then it's giving me a much more helpful value. It's saying it's been 21 days since September 1st. That makes a lot more sense. You'll notice the numbers get a little weird when my value is blank here. This is essentially, I think, just counting the number of days since maybe January 1st, 2000. So these are a little funky. We'll talk about how to clean this up a little later. But in the meantime, I'm just going to do one little last formatting fix, which is I'm going to get rid of these decimal places, these zeros. Because we're talking about whole numbers of days. There's no reason to have a decimal. So to get rid of my decimal, I'm just going to go same thing in my number formatting section of my home ribbon. And I'm going to click my little arrow, which is just going to get rid of my decimal places. It's just going to round it down to whatever I select. I could go the other way as well, add a bunch, but I don't really want that for this. I just want my nice little whole number. The reason that formulas are cool, one of many reasons I should say, is that as you add dates here, this column will automatically update, right? So let's say I just remembered I watched whatever this was last night on the 21st. As soon as I update that date, my formula automatically went to 1 day. All right, so my formula is all set up, and no matter how long it takes me to fill in all of my dates column, it will be ready to calculate for me the number of days since I've seen it. Any questions, any formula issues? Yeah.
Could you retell the formula used for the day since then?
Yes, exactly. So it's going to be equals, today, open parentheses, close parentheses, because there's no, you don't need to give it any arguments. Then you're gonna do minus and just select your cell right here. It might show up as J15 or it might show up as the dynamic name. Either works.
So I can directly click on the date scene, so it will appear on the folder.
Yeah, you can, if you're like just typing in your thing here, you can go ahead and just click on this cell if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, and then just hit enter on your keyboard to lock it in. Yeah. Yeah.
Why do I show like 0 and 4?
I'll show you.
Oh.
It's definitely weird.
It's not showing that number.
G21. Ah, okay, this is a good question. So it looks like what you're doing, so if you go in that second cell here, number, yeah, so this is, right, and then go to number 5 here, yeah. So this is,
I also had some problems editing in this
yeah,
cell here. It does not like follow as what we did for the math cell,
okay.
where you have like when you click on two things in this cell and it automatically just goes downwards.
Okay, all right, cool. Yeah, so I think what happened, if you look at this one that says 0 and you go in your formula bar, it looks a little different. It's the same thing, like
Yeah.
K21, and K is the column we're already in. So it's essentially doing like, yeah, just sort of zeroing out because it's lost. If you just take what's in your first thing and copy paste that all the way down. So what I would do, yeah, so I would go there, yeah, down, and then just do paste should be.
I know.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. I'll come back here in a second. Yeah. But,
It's the title. Blah, blah, blah.
Yep. Mhm.
Ever learn, use some
All right, what I would try, one thing I would try is to change our format. Yeah, that could be a good thing to try. Other thing I would try is just like your dates. Is that text? Yeah, that's not. Yeah. And then that's a-
I'm still like working on the error message.
Usually-
It's not popping up.
你需要把所有都去。
Yeah.
哎呀，
I think that's why, because it's not. Yeah, yeah, like look in there, hit enter. Maybe delete this. Yeah, try to type it in again. That might help. Or just try a few more rows down. And you good? Okay, cool. Okay, so select that. There, yep, perfect. And then in your home ribbon, go to where it says date and change it to number and then drop it. Nice. You got it. Yeah, sure.
I got the full amount. I wanted to get those days that I'm not sure how you did it. Like,
Here.
and
You
out
don't
of
have
that,
to
my
like.
formula bar is not.
It's so easy.
Okay, so hit home again.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll pop it open.
This is like
But
reading
your formula
always
bar.
found
Okay,
the
so for that, if
equals
you
sign.
view,
这个方式外面这叫 today.
gotta check this out.
So
Cool. Great. So yeah, and then you're just gonna do minus your cell in the column J. You've just got your today. So you're gonna do minus and then this is just the cell with the. Yep. And you can just enter. All right. Boom. Very good. And now you got to do that. Just change the format to number. The last
Oh,
piece there.
okay.
Yeah.
So I noticed that like
Yeah,
here automatically comes first.
Mm.
Like how do I change the format?
Yeah. So if you go under date, this is a great question. If you want to change your date format. So for mine, you see I have month, day, year. If you go to your date, it'll show you whatever like your computer defaults are. So mine is month, day, year. If you want a different date option, you can come down to more number formats and you can grab a different date. So it'll give you all these different little layouts. So I could change it to like this one with the dashes if I want. Let's give that a try. And it'll change how it's laid out here, but it's still recognizing that piece of information as a date. Yeah,
Thank you.
totally up to you. Other questions? I'm getting errors, not working. How we doing? Question over here?
I just came
More
in.
decimal
What
point.
part are we at?
Yeah, so we're at the date formulas part. So if you go to, did you get the link open all right?
Yeah, I downloaded.
Okay, perfect,
You know how to add a
fantastic.
column?
And then if you go to like that
How do you add a
tutorial link
column?
from the button in there, yep, we're under the date formulas.
The
How do
date
you add another-
validation.
Yep.
another-
Or sorry, data, we're past data validation. We just did math formulas and now we're in data.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there a question back here? No?
Can't see it.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Any other questions about our date formulas?
Sorry. Table.
Okay, great. Right. Beautiful. Okay, we're gonna switch gears again so you can get your mind out of date mode, and we're gonna go into some text formulas. All right, this is another cool way that you can use Excel is to manipulate any text-based data that you have. This is especially super helpful for kind of like cleaning up data, things like making sure everyone's name is capitalized, all that kind of stuff that's really tedious to do manually is really easy to do with some of the text formulas in Excel. So we're gonna do just kind of like a little test case here. If you look in our data set, you'll see that first column category is either says films English, films non-English. Let's say we wanted that to say movies instead of film. We're gonna do a formula that does that text replacement for us, right? Obviously, this is not the world's most important formula to do, but this will give you an example of what it's like to do a text formula. All right, so what we're gonna do is same pattern we've been doing before. We're gonna add a new column to put our new formula into. So in this case, I'm gonna come right here. I'm gonna do my little right click and I'm gonna insert a column over here. All right, and then I'm just gonna give this a name, something like my category, new category, I don't know, something like that. So basically for this column, what we're gonna want the end result to be is the same as this. It's just anywhere it says films, it should now say movies. Okay, so to do that, we are gonna use a text formula called substitute. All right, substitute takes 3 arguments. We haven't done a function with 3 arguments yet. All right, so it's gonna have 3 things separated by commas inside its parentheses. First thing to put in there is the cell that has the text that we want to substitute. All right, so we're gonna go grab that first place. It says film English. That's gonna be our first argument. We're gonna put a comma. Put our second argument, which is the piece of text that you want to replace. So what should it go look for in that cell that we would want to replace? In this case, it's films. Anytime you're giving text as an argument to a function, it has to be in those double quotes. All right, so if I'm going to give it the word films, I got to have my double quotes, films, and double quotes, and then my next comma. Okay. And then we're going to give it the new piece of text also in double quotes that we want to replace that text with. So in this case, I want to replace the word films with movies. So my third argument is going to be movies in quotes. Okay. So I'm going to come and write that formula out. Again, if you want a little refresher for formulas, I recommend popping open your formula builder and you can search this formula here. When you do that, it'll give you this little description of what I just said, what those 3 arguments are in your little pop-up, right? So just kind of a handy reference if you want to know what it is. Okay, so I'm going to come in my first cell in this column. I'm going to start with my equal sign. Very good. I'm going to start with my equal sign and then I'm going to give it my 3 arguments. So, or after my function name, I should say. So I'm going to type in substitute. You'll see normally in Excel, like documentation, the functions are all written in all caps. That's like the standard, but they also work in lowercase. So do whatever floats your boat. All right, substitute, open parentheses. So first thing I got to give it is the chunk of text that I want it to do the replacement in. Which cell should I give it for that?
B15.
B15, excellent. All right, so I can either just click right here or I can type in B15, both work. All right, and then I'm gonna do a comma. All right, once I do my comma, I see my little helper text kind of highlights over to the next thing, just a little handy, useful thing. So then I gotta give it the old text, so the chunk of text in quotes that I wanna get rid of. In this case, I wanna get rid of films. I'm gonna put films in quotes. I have to capitalize and spell it exactly how it's in the other one in order for this to work. So I gotta do capital F. Okay. Then I'm gonna do a comma and then I'm gonna do my new text. All right, the new text I wanna replace this with is movies. All right, and then I put in all three of my arguments. You'll see in the docs here, there's like one more argument option. It's in these square brackets right here. That means it's optional. That means you might only use it in certain cases. That means you can ignore it. In this case, we don't need it, so we're gonna ignore it. So I've got my three arguments. I'm ignoring that little last one in the pop-up. I'm just gonna close my parentheses and hit enter. All right, now you'll see my table carried it all the way down. If yours did not for some reason, you can just copy this and paste it all the way down the rest of your values. But you'll see here, all these rows say movies English, all these rows say movies non-English, and then my last few rows, TV, didn't change at all because these values didn't say the word films, so it looked for that phrase, it didn't see it, didn't do anything, it just left that value as is. Make sense? Any questions about this? Any error messages? Sound okay? Okay, great. All right. Okay, our next formula type is logic formulas. All right, so this is, you start to think about these things that are if something is true, or we have our is something true or false. That's sort of the category that we're talking about here when I say logic formulas. These you can get quite advanced with. We're going to do some more examples of these later that are a little bit more complicated, but we're going to start with a very simple example. All right, we're going to add a formula that's going to tell us whether or not something is in the top three for its category. Okay, we have the top 1 through 10 of each of these items, so we don't really need a formula to do this. We could just look with our eyeballs and say these ones are ranked 1 through 3, so it's these 3 titles, right? And then same down here. We're going to do a formula that does that. So it's going to say true. What the formula is going to output, it's true if the rank is 3 or higher, and then false otherwise. That's the formula output that we want here. All right, so to do that, we are going to use a very versatile formula called if. All right, if you've ever done any kind of like intro to coding, anything, you might have seen like if else kind of statement. That's exactly the same logic that we're using here, but simpler. Okay, so this is very easy. It is just the word if, and it takes 3 arguments. All right, just like our last one. The 3 arguments that we're going to give it are a comparison that could be true or false. All right, so in this case, we want to check if that rank value is less than 4 or not, right? Whether that's true or not. And then we can give it what the result should be if that comparison is true. So we can give it a text, we can, a string that says whatever we want. We can give it just the value true, anything that floats our boat really. And then the third argument we're going to give it is what should the result be if this thing is false. So it could be the word no, could be the value false, could be nah dog, could be all kinds of things. Okay, no one's going to put that. That's not what the kids are saying these days. Okay, so we're going to add a new column in our sheet. I'm going to add it right here next to my rank column, just because I like to do these things next to each other. And I'm going to call this is top 3. All right, something like this. Usually when your results are going to be true or false, keep that a little wider for my title. If your data in your column is going to be true or false, it's nice to start it with is. It's just kind of a convention that people use for kind of true false data. Okay, so same thing. If you still have your formula builder open, you can pop it, you can search if, and then it'll give you a little reminder of everything I just said. All right, so I'm going to come back into my cell here. It's a formula, so I'm typing equals, very good. Name of my formula here, which is just if, and then it's going to need a logical test. All right, all my logical test is what is the cell, what is the value in our rank column? So I'm just going to go grab this cell here. This cell is at less than 4. That's all I'm testing. is the value in this cell less than 4? If it is, I can do, maybe I'll give it a string. I can say yes. If I just want to give it the logic value true, I can type true without the double quotes, because true, false, it's like its own kind of special keyword for logic values. So I can either type true, false, just those words, or I could type a string in quotes like yes, and then I'll do a comma, and I'll do my value for if it's not less than 4, if that comparison turns out to be false. I'm going to say something like nope. Say whatever you want. I'm going to close my parentheses once I've got all 3 of my arguments in there. I've got commas in between them, and then I'm going to hit enter. All right, so the result we would expect to see here is it would be yes or true for the first 3 rows, and then false or no for the next 7 rows, and that's exactly what we got here. Right, I got yes, 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 and then I got a bunch of no's, and the next time I have a yes is when we switch categories, so I'm back to a rank number 1 right here. Okay. Error messages, questions?
Mine only shows 0. Like my row only shows 0.
0 for the ranking?
Yes.
Ah, okay. So it looks like what you've selected here is a range of cells. You can see how you've got your colon. So you've selected cell C2 to D3. So you actually don't want it looking at C2, you only want it looking at D3. Get rid of that cell there. Yeah, there you go. Nice.
你选择右边这个是
Yeah, so if you're trying to select a single cell, you should not see a colon between your cell labels. If you see a colon, that means you've selected a range. Dealing with lots of cells, things could get crazy.
没有它效应。
All right, any other questions, issues about logic? All right, great. Okay. So we just did a whole bunch of formulas where we were doing row-based formulas. So essentially we're adding a little data point to each row. All right, we're gonna kind of switch gears from that, and we're gonna focus now on our column-based formulas, our summary formulas. Okay, so these are the formulas I was talking about at the beginning, where we're gonna be taking like a total or an average or that kind of thing. Other than that, though, they work the same way. So we're gonna do our equal sign, we're gonna do our function name, we're gonna do our parentheses, and just the types of arguments they take are gonna be a little different. We're gonna be selecting more ranges of cells. So we'll get into that in a second. We're gonna start with a very simple example. So again, these formulas could be logic, math, text, you know, they could be all the things. We're gonna start with a math function, which is just average. All right, so we're gonna figure out what is the average runtime. So because this is a summary formula, we're not gonna have a result in each row. We're just gonna have one result for the whole data set. All right, so what we're gonna work on creating now are these guys, right? These kind of single number totals. So this is where I can get a little creative with the layout. I can come up here and maybe just click into one of these cells. Maybe I want to go down here and say average runtime. All right, so I'm just going to type in a little label for myself to know what I'm about to calculate in my cell. You can label it however you like. Okay. This is where I'm going to do my summary formula. So I'm typing in a formula. So I'm going to start with my equal sign. And next thing I'm going to do is type in average. All right. Now, when I type in average, you'll see I get a little, my little hint pop-up looks a little different. Okay, that's number 1, then it has in brackets number 2, and then it has a dot, dot, dot. What that means is that I can give it however many numbers I want, and it'll take the average of that. All right, so it'll take care of that for me. If I go over to my little formula builder and pull this up, that will give you a little reminder down here. Obviously, for an average, you typically want to give it more than one number, because if you just take an average of a number, it's just the number. You haven't really done it. You know, you're just dividing by 1. Okay, so what I want to do here is come over and select all of my runtime values in my data set. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to scroll over here to my runtime column. You could do hours or minutes, up to you. I'm going to do our original hours one. I'm going to click my first cell here, and then either I can click and drag all the way down, or I can do my favorite keyboard shortcut that I've already taught you guys, Shift Command down. If I weren't in my formula builder menu, which I am, I would select all the way down. I'm going to click and drag because I still have that open. All right, and then you will either see in your formula bar, you'll see one of two things. You might see a range of cells. So I might see like I-14 to I-54, something like that with a colon in between. Or if it's doing our kind of dynamic labeling, it's going to show you table 1 runtime, meaning it's just grabbing a header of that column I just selected. Either one is fine. They both function the same. Come back up to my formula bar, close my parentheses and hit enter. And go and look at my result. Awesome. So I should get a single number in that cell and I should have something like equals average. And then in the parentheses, either a range of cells or that little dynamic label for my column. All right. Did anyone not get a number for this? Did we get an error? Okay. We'll kind of bounce back and forth with the formatting. We can do a little more formatting at the end. Something that I like to do for little summaries and a little quick document like this is to just grab these 2 cells selected and also format them as their own little tiny table. So I'll just come and do the same little formula format as table that I did for my thing down here below. And it'll just give me my little header and a little color coding, etc. Up to you, kind of optional, but just kind of a nice visual. And then same thing, I can do a little text formatting. So for me, I usually like to center these kinds of things. And then the last thing I might do here is I don't think I need like 7 decimal places telling me that it's a little over 4 hours. So I'm going to come select that cell, come up to my number formatting menu and just get rid of some of these decimal places. Maybe we'll call it 4.4 hours. Okay, any questions about how we got our average read time? Did everyone get something like 4 hours? Okay, I don't remember if this is this week's or last week's data. Okay, fabulous. All right, so our first summary formula. Okay, we're gonna do a couple more summary formulas. This next one is going to be a summary formula with logic. All right, so we're kind of bringing in that logic concept. Essentially what we're going to do here is use logic to determine what we want to include in our summary. So instead of saying I want to summarize everything, I just want to summarize the data for the shows that I've seen or for the content that I've seen. Okay, so we can do that because we have a column over here that tells us whether or not we've seen the content. That's what we did with our data validation. So we can use that to say, all right, check this column for anywhere where I wrote, yes, it was okay, and take the summary of those. So that is what we are going to do. So we're going to sum up the runtime of just the content that you watched, which should be a rough estimation of how much total time you spent watching the stuff, not including repeats. No judgment from me. Okay. So we're going to do another type of little cell in the top. You can give it a little label. I'm going to call this something like my viewing time. All right, maybe I'll go over here and kind of space it out a little bit. I'll label it something like this. And then I'm going to put my formula right underneath it just to keep my little formatting consistent. You could do side by side. You could do all kinds of stuff. Okay. I'm going to use a formula called sum if. All right, so sum being a summary formula and then if applying a logic element to it. All right, so this formula is going to take 3 arguments and 2 of them are going to be columns. All right, so the first thing I'm going to give it is the column where I want it to go check whether a value is true, whether something is true before we count it in our sum. So in this case, I want to have it go check that have I seen it column before it does my total. If that column does not sense no, I haven't seen it, I don't want it. Right? So I'm going to say, go look in this column. Second thing I'm going to give it is what should it go look in that column for? What value should it kind of match that column against? So in this case, it should be something like, yes, it should be one of the values actually that you put in your other tab when we did the data validation. So I typed in some kind of like silly, yes, I loved it, etc. Maybe you just typed yes, no. Whatever that value is, we need that exact text as our second argument. Okay. All right. Well, then the last argument that it needs is the column that it should actually do the math. So what should it add up? In this case, that's our runtime column. So what this is going to do is it's going to say, all right, It's gonna look at this first row, so I'm gonna give it a whole column, right? But it's gonna look at this first row and it's gonna say, does it say, yes, I loved it here? If not, do nothing, move on to the next row. Does this one say, yes, I loved it? No, it does not, just move on to the next row. Does this one say, yes, I loved it? Yes, it does, because I just made a little edit. Great, now it's gonna take the sum of whatever is in this runtime column in this same row. So it's gonna say, all right, here's 2, this is my running count. Then it's gonna keep on moving down. It's gonna go to this row. It's gonna say, have I seen it? Does that match the yes, I loved it text? Does not, so I'm not adding anything. My running total is still 2. I'm gonna keep going down. Let's say I've come here, maybe this was a yes, I loved it. It gets to this row. This is a match, right? This matches that value I wanna match to. So it's gonna add 2.06 onto my 2, so now I'm at 4.06. That would be my total. It's gonna continue on down. All right, that's the logic that it's following. So to actually do that formula, I'm gonna come in here, and again, you can pull up your little sum if notes right here. All right, and it'll give you your little preview on the bottom. So I'm gonna do my equal sign because it's a formula. I'm gonna do sum if, and then I'll see what it gives me, right? It gives me my range, my criteria, and then my sum range, right? What do I actually want to add? I don't want to add up the text. Yes, I loved it, because that's not a number. I can't add that. So that's why we're going to give it a separate range for the sum. Okay, so the range I want to give it here is what it's going to go check that column for, and that is these values. Have I seen it? So I'm going to select here, go all the way down, all the way down. All right, so this should be either like K, what is that, K15 through 54, or it's gonna do the dynamic name thing, either one, but you should have multiple cells selected. You should have that full column selected for this. Okay, second thing we're gonna give it is that chunk of text. So what text do we want it to look for that it'll add up this column? I think I did yes, comma, I loved it. So that's the text I'm gonna type in. You should type in whatever text matches a value that you actually have in that column. Make sure you put it in your double quotes. Once you have that, you're going to do your comma, and then you're going to go select the column that actually has those runtime values. So I'm going to go select the same column, and you're going to want to make sure it's the same length, right? It should be row, what was that, row 15 to 54. That's that same, it should be the same size. Okay. So if they're different sizes, it'll try to be getting the sum of something it didn't check, right? They've got to be the same size. Okay, so I've got my first argument, my second argument, my third argument with commas in between. I'm going to close my parentheses and hit enter. All right, and I should get, I got a 0 here. Okay, that might mean that I misspelled my value. So I'm gonna go check what my values were. Let me zoom this in a little bit. Yeah, okay, so my value was actually yes, comma, loved it, not yes, comma, I loved it. So if you made a similar typo, you can join me in coming back to my formula, which is right here. Okay, and then I'm just gonna fix my little text right here. It should just be loved it, not I loved it. And then it's gonna come to my 4.06, right? Exactly what I would expect, because it's adding up just the runtime from the row where I saw it. Make sense? Is everyone getting a non-zero number for their viewing time? Even if you don't watch Netflix, I would encourage you to put a yes in one of your columns, just so you can check that your formula works. All right. And then same deal here. I just like to do the little format as table because it's a little nifty formatting trick. And then same deal, I might come in and just do my center, and I might take my decimal places down a little bit and just keep it to a nice 4.07, maybe a 4.1, round up a little bit. Okay, does everyone have something that looks like this at the top? Got two kind of summary full stats going on. Any questions, errors? Feeling okay? Okay, so there's a bunch of other summary formulas. So we're now that you've used a bunch of formulas, you've kind of seen how the arguments are described. You can look them up in the formula builder. You can also just Google like sum if formula or stick that in ChatGPT and it'll explain right how to use it. We can do this with the same formula. So if you're like, yep, I totally got this, sum if under my belt, ready to go, we could add another component that would do the count of the number of pieces of content. So of these 40 pieces of content, how many have you seen? that's a function called COUNTIF. Now, I haven't told you what the arguments for COUNTIF are. Right, so let's say you want to, I've seen 3 of these things. I want the number 3 to show up at the top. And if I watch a 4th one, I want it to update to the number 4. Okay, so to use a formula, I've been kind of giving you, right, the arguments that you need for each function. The way that you're going to kind of use Excel, if as you kind of go forward and keep using formulas, is you're going to you have a sense of the types of formulas that you can access, right? Text, dates, logic, summary, right? You kind of have a sense of these things. And you can kind of look up the name of the formula or scroll through Formula Builder and look for the name that looks right. And then look at the arguments and sort of piece it together. So if we were going to do that for COUNTIF, what I would do if I were you is come into my sheet and I might say, how many have I watched? Something like this. And then I would look up, how do I use COUNTIF? So I would look up COUNTIF over here. And I would see my little syntax helper over here. So this takes 2 arguments, range and criteria. Range is the range of cells from which you want to count non-blank cells. Does anyone have any idea what range I might select? What in my spreadsheet might I select if I wanted to put that first argument into this? Take a guess. Yeah. So we want to figure out how many pieces of content have we watched. And we're going to use this COUNTIF formula to do it. So if you were just going to do this with your eyeballs, forget about the formula. What column would you go to and just count with your fingers to see how many of these that you've watched? Which column is that? K for you. All right, is it K for me as well? Yes, K for me as well, right? If I were just doing this with no formula, I would just come over here and count 1, 2, 3, etc. That's the same thing we're going to give our formula. So it wants the range from which you want to count. I would come over here and just select all the way down from this column. Second thing is the criteria. So what does this say about the criteria? It says this is the condition in the form of a number, expression, or text that defines which cells will be counted. So if we want to check which values in this column are the ones that we have seen, do you think we're going to give it a number, some text? What are we going to give it for this criteria? Text? Yes, and specifically what text? Yes, we're going to give it whatever, however you kind of typed out yes, affirmative, whatever in your thing, right? So you can see how you can kind of like read this a little bit. It's a little clunky. This might be a little new, right? But what you can do is kind of read through this, think about how you would do it in your head, right? And kind of try to understand which piece is going to go to which argument. That's sort of the skill that you're looking to build in using formulas. It's less about like memorizing each formula and what order things go in. All right, that's kind of the skill you want to work on. So if we were going to do our little COUNTIF with what we just learned, I'd come over here, I would do my equals COUNTIF, do my parentheses and grab my range. So this is the column where I would check whether I've seen it. So I would come over here, select all the way down, come back to my formula bar, do a comma, and then I would do my text. So I'm going to try to spell it right this time. I think I spelled it yes, comma, loved it, exclamation point. Again, anytime I'm giving text to a formula, it's got to be in quotes so that it recognizes that it's text. So I've got my 2 arguments, I've got my range, I've got my criteria, that's it. I'm going to close my parentheses, hit enter, and it's showing me that I have watched 2 of them. Now, this question here was not very precise. How many have I watched and loved, should we say? Because one of my other options was yes, it was okay. I'm not counting that. I'm just counting the stuff I really loved.
If I want to add yes, it was okay, could I like plus 1 more sentence?
Yes, we definitely could. So we're getting to combining formulas, but yes, we could come in and essentially do this formula again. So we could say plus, And we could do another COUNTIF, and we could do the same thing. So we could select this same range here and then give it our other text. So in this case, I think I called it, what did I say? Yes, it was okay. So I select that range, do my comma. Yes, it was okay. Spelled that right. All right, yes, and now my total is 4. My total is 4. All right, so skipping ahead a little bit, but this is a good example to do it on. So all of my formulas that we just talked about can be combined, which is where this gets really powerful and you can do really useful stuff. So all we did here is we did our COUNTIF formula. We closed our parentheses, all good. Then we just did a plus sign and just tacked another one right on the end. So this went and counted in that column how many said, yes, I loved it. And then it found 2. And then it said, all right, take the 2, hold that over here. Then go evaluate how many did I say yes was okay. Turned out that was also 2. I've seen 4 of these things total. So it said, all right, I got a 2 over here, I got a 2 over here. There's a plus in the middle. I'm going to return a 4. All right, that's all this is doing here. Got a little advanced. I like it. Okay. Any questions about this? Does this make sense? That might be a little bit of a jump. All right, great. Okay. Amazing. So, perfect segue into combining formulas. Okay, so like I said, I do not focus on memorizing functions. Focus on getting a general idea of what kinds of things can functions do. How do I figure out what the syntax is? I open my formula builder or I Google or Chat GPT it. And then how do I think about which parts of my spreadsheet plug into the arguments for that formula? All right, so we're gonna get into combining formulas. A good way to approach this as you're learning it is to remember that you can always do formulas in their separate cells and then combine them later. Okay, so for example, this one that we just did here, what I could have done is just this first formula. I'm just gonna put this over in its own cell. All right, so I've just copy pasted that first bit. It's exactly the same. That's given me a 2, messing with my table, but that's okay. And then I can also copy paste the second part of it after the plus sign. I could do that in its own column, right? So if I was getting like a weird error here, I would actually want to do this, right? I'd want to copy paste them out into 2 separate ones. I'm going to copy paste this, stick it in its own column. And all right, why isn't this evaluating? What's my problem with this formula that I copy pasted? I didn't have an equal sign, yes, because I only need the equal sign at the beginning of my cell. I'm gonna add that equal sign and I'll get 2. All right, so now I can see these formulas separately are 2 and 2. So in this cell where it just has a plus sign in between, I'd expect it to be 4. That's coming out correctly. That's all good. All right. It's out of here, just tidy up my view a little bit. Okay, so we are gonna do another round of how to combine formulas. All right, this is basically what I just said. But as you can see, they become a little hard to read as they stack together, especially if they start to nest. So the example that we just had was sort of 2 added together. That visually is a little simpler to see. We can start to nest any formula into any of the arguments of another formula, which starts to get a little like messes with your head a little bit if you start to look at this too much and there's like 6 parentheses and you lose your place a little bit. Okay, so these 2 things here are the same, right? These are 2 separate formulas. This is substitute, which we did before, movies and films. And this is just taking the length of the string. So you could imagine we did this in one column and we're replacing, in this case, a little hard to see, we're replacing a space. So there's a space between these 2 quotes with nothing between these 2 quotes. So we're essentially deleting the spaces. That's what this is doing. And then so that the result of that formula is my full name, all one word. And then in this cell here, I am just taking the length of that. So if I stack this together, meaning instead of putting this as my argument, I just take this whole thing in green and slot it right down inside. It's going to give me the same answer all in one cell. It's a little cleaner once you're a little more comfortable. This is faster, just as you're typing along, right? But as you're learning, it's helpful to do this step first, just so you can kind of see what's going on. Get a little lost. Make sense? Does everyone understand the jump from here to here? Yes, okay. Excellent. Okay, so we are going to try combining formulas for a row-based formula. All right, what we are going to do, this is a sort of a common use case for things you might think of like ID numbers or identifiers, emails, something like that. You have everyone's username and you need to convert it to their email address, this sort of thing. So we are going to use a formula, it's a combination of formulas to create a URL for each of these pieces of content. Obviously, Netflix URLs are a little more complicated than what we're about to do. These are fake URLs that are not going to work, but you get the general idea, right? There's something in the back end of Netflix somewhere that does this, right? It takes netflix.com, it attaches some sort of like ID number, it attaches the content title, it attaches a bunch of other cookie tracking nonsense, I'm sure, to create the URL, right? So we are going to do that. So if the title of the content is Love is Blind, we want our formula to output www.netflix.com/love is blind. All right. So what is happening between the title and here? There's sort of three different edits that are being made, I should say. What is changing? How do you get from here to here? If you're like typing on your keyboard, do you like delete stuff? What are you doing? Add stuff. Okay. But specifically, we add www.netflix.com. Okay, so we got to add a chunk on the beginning. Great. All right. What else do we got to do? What else is different between here and here? Italicized, yeah, that's just for my kind of demo here. I think somebody said capital, somebody said capital, like this has capital letters, this does not. All right, so I got to take lowercase, and there's one more thing that's different between here and here. Spaces, great, I got to get rid of those spaces, right? So basically what I did here, right, where I was doing my substitute, where I'm substituting my space with nothing, that's getting rid of my spaces, okay? So those are the three things we need to do to get from here to here. So those are, no surprise, the three formulas that we're going to use and combine to do this step. Okay, luckily Excel has a handy dandy formula called lower, which just takes in some text and spits it out in lowercase. This is super handy for stuff like websites and emails. Substitute, we just talked about this, so we're going to use it to swap the spaces for an empty string. And then we're going to throw in one formula you haven't seen yet today called concatenate, which adds two pieces of text together, basically just, you know, scotch tapes them together right in the middle. And that's how we'll add on the chunk with our URL, our www. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to add a column to your table. You can maybe do this next to your title column. That might be the easiest place. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to right click and do insert column. All right, and first I want you to try just applying the lowercase formula. All right, so that is our formula over here. It's called lower. So I'd give this column a name, something like lowercase title. Come in your first cell and take a stab at what do I need to do with my lower formula to get this title to show up in all lowercase right here. Okay, I want you to try setting up this formula yourself. I'm not going to do it yet. Give you a chance to try. All right, remember you got to start with your equal sign. You need your function name, and then you need to give it an argument. All right. And what should pop out when you're done is this title text in all lowercase, no capital letters. All right, I'm going to give you all a minute to try that.
How do you open the formula builder?
Yeah, good question. For if you're on a Mac, it's this view up here and then formula builder right here. Is it there for you, or do you have a?
I have a PC.
Can't tell. Okay, in that case, it might be in the view right here for you. There might say formula builder. Let's see if there I can come. Go to your, click in your formula builder. Yeah, just click inside. It's just, yeah, and then try this little down arrow. Aha, there you go. Okay, so if you search in here, yeah.
Oh, so this is like basically the same thing?
Yeah, it looks like yours just comes up in a separate window, but yeah, it should be fine.
Thank you.
All right. Little wave of hands if you got a lowercase formula working. Little wave of hands. All right, yes, somebody want to tell me what you typed in? Saw a hand back here. You want to tell me what you got? Equals? Lower?
And then parentheses.
Parentheses?
Click E16.
E16 for me it's E15, but same deal. Cool.
And then close parentheses.
Close parentheses. Excellent.
Enter.
Enter. Amazing. Fabulous. Okay. All our titles in lowercase. True rocket science going on here. Okay. Very cool. Thank you. So everyone should have something that looks like this. Again, it should copy all the way down, or you can copy paste it all the way down. Did anyone not get this result from their formula? Did we get an error or anything going on? Okay, great. We're gonna go to the next layer. So we have the thing in all lowercase. Now we need to get rid of the spaces, right? URLs don't have spaces. We need to get rid of the spaces. So you're gonna add another column and do your substitute formula. But you're gonna do it on this result. So this cell needs to be, this column cell needs to be an argument in your next function. So I'm gonna say, come in here, do insert a new column, and I'm gonna call this like without spaces, something like that. All right, so next you're gonna do the same thing again, but with your substitute formula. Now we already used this one once today, so maybe this one will be a little fresher. All right, I want you to use your substitute formula in here, and this should be one of its arguments. All right, so you need 3 arguments. I'll let you either go back and look at the one we did before. You can pull them up in your formula builder. All right, and your result should be the same text, but with no spaces. All right, so same as column F on mine, but with no spaces. All right, that's what you should come out with using that substitute formula. So I'm gonna give everyone a minute. If you're feeling stuck, lost, give me a little wave, I'll come help. Get a little wave of fingers if you got it, if you think you got it working. You got something with no spaces. Okay, all right, we're getting there, we're getting there. All right, can I get someone to tell me what you put in? Maybe there in the back? Equals substitute, let me type in the right spot. Okay, equals substitute. F15, I gotta do my parentheses. All right, and then F15, great for, yep. Perfect, yep.
Comma and double quote, space, double quote, and then close parentheses.
Yep, double quote, space, double quote, very good. Perfect, and then close parentheses. All right, I'm under too few arguments for this function. All right, I think I need one more, which is I've given it my space, and it actually needs one more thing, which is what I want to replace my space with, which is nothing. Yeah. Cool. Did yours work without the nothing? Okay, that might be an Excel version thing. Presumably, like if that is If the second thing is blank, you could imagine it like defaulting to nothing, right? So that might be the case. Cool. All right. So same deal, hit enter to copy down, but you can copy paste. And I'm seeing what I expect, right? So instead of K-pop Demon Hunters with spaces, I've got same text, but no spaces. Cool. Anyone get an error? Anyone get something different? Anybody stuck? Yeah.
I'm able to get it. It's not coming to me.
It's not coming through for you? Yeah, take a quick look. Beautiful. Great, so you want to give it then, it looks like, there's no space in between your second argument, so it's saying go look for an empty string and replace it with an empty string. Yeah, you just hit enter now.
Oh no, this doesn't need
That was
space.
exactly, yep, very good. Great.
Oh, okay.
That was it. There you go. All right. Questions, errors? Everybody getting no spaces? Fabulous. Okay, we're gonna do this one more time with this little project. We're gonna add one more column in here. And we're gonna call this something like URL. All right, so I'm gonna insert a column. Call this something like link or URL. All right, and for this third step of this, we're gonna use the formula concatenate. All right, to add two pieces of text together. So as your reminder, we want to end up with this www.netflix.com/ little chunk of text we just made for every show. All right, so you can imagine what you're going to concatenate is this plus this for each show. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to use our concatenate formula in here. I can look it up. All right, great. Same thing. All right, so in here, use your concatenate formula and give me a Netflix URL. All right, I'll give everybody a second to try that out. Remember, if you're giving it text, it needs to be in double quotes. Yeah. Sure, what's up?
Insert columns on the computer.
Every time I'm on it.
It also sometimes gives me right and sometimes only gives me left. I don't know what's going on. I have no answer. Other than that's kind of annoying. Yeah, I think it's again like sometimes it defaults to that one for some reason. I sometimes both pop up to me, but no, yeah, you're totally fine. Not doing anything wrong. There a hand over here? I see. Yeah. Okay, great. So you have the text here, so you got to go to your second argument. So you need to add a. All right, so the second, so the text we want to get rid of is the text we're going to give it. So what's the text we want to get rid of?
What's the text?
So what do we want our result to
Well, we
be?
don't want
We don't want spaces. So the text we want to get rid of is a space. Yeah.
Oh.
We're going to do quote space. Quote. Just like actual like just hit the space bar once. Yeah.
Okay, that is.
Perfect. Yep. And then we're going to do a comma. And then what do you want to replace that space with? Nothing. No, nothing. Exactly. It's just so quote quote. Just
Oh.
yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Close that out. All right. Oh, and then you just want to select just the one cell. You don't want to, it looks like you, right in your first argument there, you selected your full. Oh, no, that worked. Okay.
Okay.
It's totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I got like the other things wrong, like the name.
Oh.
And
Oh, it looks like you copy pasted just the value all the way down instead of the formula.
okay, so if the
At this point, you'd have to like hit undo a bunch of times to get all the way back, which you don't want to do to undo your stuff, but it's probably just a copy paste error. The other thing you could do is you could download a fresh one from the website and just paste that column back in over if you needed to. Not necessary for this, but yeah. So,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. All right, issues, questions? How are we doing with our concatenate? Anybody have some URLs? Nobody came up with URLs? I thought you might have some URLs for us. All right, what you got?
I first put equal concatenate and then brackets
Concatenate.
and then quote www.netflix.com and
Amazing.
then slash
Beautiful.
and then quotes
Close my quotes.
and then comma.
Yep.
And then I selected the row without spaces
Amazing. For me, that's G15. Perfect.
and then bracket.
Close my bracket. Amazing. Hit enter. Look at those official looking URLs. These links don't go anywhere. These links are not functioning, but they look cool. And we did them with formula. That's what matters. You might notice there's like a couple other things we might do differently if these were real URLs. For example, some of the titles have apostrophes in them. Queen's Gambit has an apostrophe. That's not going to work in a URL, right? So you could imagine we would do one more substitute formula to go look for any apostrophes and just replace those again with nothing, right? That's how we would compress it back down. Yeah, this is basically how you can sort of create URLs or email addresses or any of that, right? Okay, we're gonna do one more thing with this. We're gonna create one more column for this project, and we're gonna call this something like URL combined formula. So now what I want you to do is in this column, I want you to produce this same result, but you're not allowed to refer to any of these three that we just added. You're only allowed to refer to the original column, meaning the step that I want you to do is this step. So we just did essentially three of these, right? Three separate individual formulas. I want you to now in one column, nest them all together, right? Does that make sense? So you should have one formula that has a lower, a substitute, and a concatenate. It's gonna look like this, right? In our little kind of nested format. They're gonna be all in one line. And it's gonna get the same result as we just got in our three separate columns. Does that make sense? We just did step one, step two, step three. In this column, we're gonna do steps 1 through 3 all together. Okay, so this, what you're gonna be typing in here is gonna involve all three of these. You can use what you've already put in here, right? You're gonna start with your concatenate, but this piece in this concatenate formula where you refer to your column G, whatever that is for you, you're gonna replace that reference with whatever formula we've actually used in column G. All right, so you're gonna replace that reference with our substitute thing. You're gonna just paste this kind of on in, right? Then you're gonna do that one more time. So that instead of referring to our lowercase title, you're pasting in the formula we did there. That's just referring back to this. All right, so you've already written all three of these formulas. You've already done the hard work here. All you need to do is nest them together so that you're getting them all in one go. Okay? Make sense? All right, I'll give you a few minutes, and if you're feeling stuck, give me a wave and I'll come. Okay? Anybody totally stuck? Anybody need help getting unstuck? Yeah. Okay, all right, so this one gets a little tricky. Okay, so now it looks like you're referring to show title twice. So I think, yeah, something's off with it. Okay. So, let's see, couple things going on. Get rid of this last dot com.
Rid of.
Yeah. Yep, because that's already included in our other text here, so that's okay. Get rid of that comma, that's cool. Okay, let's go. Do we hit your right arrow key once? All right, okay. So this is gonna tell us, what it's concatenating. Okay, so it's gonna concatenate here within that parentheses is the show title, a space, no space, the, URL, and then the title again. So that's
Right.
all in that one parentheses.
Oh, so you have to remove the tent, add into the next parentheses, right?
Yeah, so you basically want, I would do just your concatenate, like get that one. I would start with that, so get that working.
And then put it onto the next parentheses, is that right?
I think what would be easier for you, actually, I would just X out of
Okay.
this. Yeah, just get out of here, just hit escape, get out of
Okay.
here. Okay, great, all right, so I would go to, let's look at your formula you have in your column 3 here. All right, so what I would do if I were you is I would copy paste this whole thing, and stick it in your other thing as a starting point. All right, cool. Yeah, beautiful, okay, and then where it says column 2.
Yeah.
Go, get rid of that, and then that's where you're gonna put your substitute
right.
formula. You're gonna type in your, yeah, it looks like it's some extra brackets going on and stuff, but yeah, so in there, what it should say is substitute, open, close parentheses. All your substitute stuff should be going on in there, so it's more like nested, if that
Right,
makes sense.
okay.
Yeah.
Color, all right.
Okay, so let's see, so now you're back in column 3, so sorry, what you got in your column? Okay, so yeah, so what you wanna do is now get rid of column 2, so delete that part. Delete those little square brackets. And now type in substitute. No, great, and then open, do a close parentheses, so you can close that one off, great, and then put your arguments for substitute in between those red parentheses. So what do you need to go in substitute? Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I have a question. I enter,
Oh.
but it shows like I have too many
Arguments, yes.
So.
Okay, classic. So it looks like one
Okay.
thing you're doing is you're wrapping the whole thing in the function length, which you don't need to do, so we can get rid of that guy. All right, and it looks like you got an extra parenthesis at the end, so it's highlighting in red. Okay, so what this is doing is it's concatenating these two things together. Your substitute is got our 3 things. It looks like we're missing a closed parentheses for our lower. So if you add one more closing parentheses there. Yeah. I just make this one. Let's try that.
Still,
All right.
okay with like extra here, or I need to get both alt or substitute.
I think, oh yeah, I see what's going on. So you've got, see your commas, substitute and lower, I think are switched. I think that's what's going on. If you switch substitute, because substitute's the one with 3 arguments, and right now you've got 3 arguments after lower. I think that's your problem. Okay, you're getting close to time, so let's do, did anyone get this working all in one cell? Anybody got it? Hold on a sec, you think you got it?
Yeah.
Alright. You got it right here?
Yeah.
Let's go, all right, let's do it, what you got?
Concatenate.
Equals concatenate,
And left parenthesis.
Okay.
Quotation mark 3w dot netflix.com.
www.netflix.com,
Yeah.
Great.
And then comma substitute.
comma, substitute. All right, so this is where my substitute formula is is becoming my second argument in my concatenate, right?
And
Great.
also parenthesis.
Yep.
Lower parenthesis.
Yep.
That is
My show title, right?
Yeah,
Whatever
yeah.
that is for me, that's
Like
E15.
E15,
Okay.
and then comma, and then like quotation mark, double spaces, comma, quotation mark,
All right. So
no
now,
spaces.
yep, now I'm doing
yeah,
my space, my no space.
Parentheses.
Parentheses. All right. So when I do this parentheses, I'm closing out this function. And when I do I'm closing out my substitute, right? Or I'm closing out my lower.
Yeah. well,
Here I'm
yes.
closing out my concatenate, and I think do I need one more? I get enough. Okay, great. Many of you got this argument. Okay, let's see. I think I just missed. Oh, maybe I got an extra bracket. No. Let's try that. Nope.
It seems like there another
Oh, I think maybe did I get lower and
Lower,
substitute
yeah.
switched for you? Yeah.
this is
Okay, just help someone else fix this. Okay, substitute and lower. Let's try that. Okay, beautiful. So that's happening all in the same row. It's giving me the same result. Okay, so let's go look at this really quickly. All right. Our concatenate is taking two arguments. It's taking www.netflix.com. Thank you, by the way, great job. So it's taking www.netflix.com. The second argument it's giving is this whole thing, lower substitute all wrapped in that parentheses. That whole thing is the second argument to our concatenate. So it's going to evaluate that thing and then glue it onto netflix.com. All right, we go in there. What's that doing? Lower is taking the lowercase of the result of our substitute. Okay. And then our substitute is referring back to our original show title and doing that space replacement. Okay. So they're nested together. Now you could switch the order of the lower and substitute, right? But you got to watch and make sure you get your parentheses and your commas right, right? Because there's no reason we couldn't have removed the spaces first and then made it lowercase or vice versa, right? These two could be in either order, up to you. But we got to do both of those first before we concatenate that on. Actually, I guess this is all lowercase as well, so actually that would have been fun. You could do these in any order. But what I wanted you to get to is the only data point that this is referring to is our original show title, whereas these three that we did before are chained. This one's referring to this column, this one's referring to this column, this one's referring to this column. Conceptually, that's the same thing that our last combined one here is doing, but it's doing it via this nesting. Okay. All right, we packed a lot into 2 hours, covered a lot. All right, I have a couple other notes. They're in the tutorial. If you want a little bit more summary formula practice, maybe we'll do this exercise next time. There's a little bit more formatting. I also encourage you, if you want to get some practice, download a different data set and try these steps again, right? Like run through this stuff again. I put in some suggestions of like fun data sets. You can download like your own Spotify history, your own Hulu history, stuff like that. And do your own data. You can download the transactions from your bank account and do stuff with that data. Up to you. But download something fun, run through all these steps. That's the best way to kind of practice. We'll be back next week with advanced formulas, and then I think we're off for a week and then back for charts and tables and dashboards. I've also linked a couple, and these are linked on the website as well, some like website, email, social media stuff that is good for learning Excel. So if you want to learn Excel on TikTok, I put one of those on there. If you want a more traditional tutorial, I put one of those on there. So take your pick. And I will be back here next week. The Digital Lounge collects feedback about these sessions, so I put the link in there. If you loved it or not, you can let me know. I'm also going to hang out for a couple minutes if you have less questions, you got stuck on anything. But thank you all for coming and hope to see you at the next one. Didn't work for you?
Yeah, I just
All right, let's see. We got our